Hello, welcome to a homework edition of Sundae Club, where normally every Sunday morning we do Ruby on Rails live streaming, but it's not Sunday, it's Saturday at 11:23 a.m. UK time, and we are, instead of doing just some Ruby on Rails stuff, we are going to do what we've done previously on what I call homework editions, where we just don't have to focus on the main app. We are going to tidy up a Git branch that we have been working on for far too long. So every week on a Sunday morning, we stream and put this Ruby on Rails app together, and as we go along, we just kind of do the Git commits. However, what we've been doing is what I have always kind of work in progress commits, so they're prefixed with WIP in the commit message, and in general you just kind of throw them in. You're like, hey, I'm working on this, I'll come back and tidy it up later. And normally what you would do if you are being thorough and kind of doing things right is you would then do them in small chunks. You kind of do your work in progress, get to a nice point, and then you would tidy them up. So you would rebase them, maybe make a pull request if that's the way you're working. You would do something to get that sorted out. We have done none of that, so we have basically just been doing work in progress commits for all of the streams for the last month, I would say, at least. I don't know how many streams I've actually done now, but we'll come back tomorrow and start again. So I would always say that let's tidy those up in a homework edition, and I have never done it, but today I had some spare time, so let's do it today. The first thing we're going to do is check that the audio on the stream is working. Should hear my voice on my iPad. Yep, cool, so I can hear myself. Great. Let's go and jump over to... Let's just jump right in. Let's get straight to it. So if I share my screen here, this is VS Code. But what I did do after last week was reinstall the GitHub app. So where is that? Let's find that. Because it was pretty... it's not an app I use day to day. I actually use either the command line or I actually use source tree, which I quite enjoy, from Atlassian. It's kind of a good visual way. It's got a lot of problems, doesn't refresh particularly quickly and huge repos, but it gets the job done. And I use the terminal most of the time for different bits and bobs. So, but what I did like about the GitHub app is we could resize it, so we could make it easier to read on the stream. And also it's got, if you're used to the GitHub UI, it'll be familiar in that kind of way. So what you can see here is we've got our Sundae Club repo, and as you see, we've only got one change, one kind of active unstaged change here. On the GitHub app, it's actually really hard to see what's staged and what's not staged. I think is that it? Yeah, I think it's the tick, but you can also do, like, if we had made more than one, can we stage just one line at a time? Yeah, I think you can click that. Yeah, so this is not particularly clear to me. On source tree, I prefer the view where you have everything unstaged below, everything staged above, and you can move individual lines or individual hunks around. The GitHub app is not staged, whole file is staged, and then if you just stage one line, it gives you the interim state for the checkbox. I don't enjoy that. I don't actually know if there's my memory of this is there weren't a lot of options in this app. But the fact that you could change the font size for the stream was the main selling point for it, so I'm hoping you can read that. Right, we actually don't care about this change right now. So the reason that we made this change that's not been committed is because we wanted to log in and out of the app without having to confirm our email address, just while we were testing it. We didn't make a decision how the real users were going to behave for that, so this was just set quickly so that we didn't need to worry about it. So I'm just going to... Yeah, I can just discard that change. Okay, cool. Okay. This is interesting. Yeah, like publish branch. This is what's always of interest me about the GitHub app is they use words like publish branch, but publish isn't really a Git term. Like presumably that's push. And they used to have sync or synchronize in here, which again is not I mean, maybe there is now, but my memory is that there wasn't like git sync. So I don't know if maybe there is a git publish now. I have no idea. So I know they add stuff to it all the time. Very much hasn't been published to the remote yet. By publishing it to GitHub, you can. Okay. I kind of figured we'd want to keep the wording the same for learners. Okay, so what we want to do is actually check out our history. So this is, I want to see how many there are. So remember, if you are watching this because you're kind of you've learned Git and you're looking to do more stuff with your branches and rebasing and things like that. Even if you're using an app like this, and let's pull up source tree at the same time, actually. Yeah. So the problem with using this app on the stream is we can't change the font size as far as I'm aware. I did look through the settings. I couldn't see any way to do that. So if anyone watches this later and does know how to actually adjust the font size, I would be super appreciative of that. Because I would rather use this because I know it from day-to-day use. So we can see that we have a lot of work in progress. That's the whip prefix here. And loads and loads of them. And that's not what we want. We want to have them all neatly written up with a little message that makes sense to everyone, and for them all to be on master. The branch that they are on at the moment, and if you can see this, let's see if I move source tree to there. And then, okay, I can't quite fit them both on the screen. I'm hoping these are visible anyway. Yeah, you can't actually in the GitHub app. You can't actually see where the other branches are. Yeah, I don't like this. This UI doesn't fit with my mental model of Git. Whereas like the kind of way that source tree does it of showing a line that represents one branch, and then having literally a fork off at the point where it forks off. We don't have any it's not a fork, sorry, it branches off for each different branch. We don't have any branches that deviate from the one we've got, but we've got master here, so you can actually see. Again, I know the font is going to be really small, so this commit here is origin, master, and master, our local version, and then you've got all of these commits, and they are all on a branch which is called install pundit. So I'm going to remove source tree from this screen because it's too small to read. So you can see here that we're on the current branch of install pundit that we committed to 6 days ago. 5 days ago? Weird thing between timestamps there. And we know that that's not sensible. Like, we did pundit about I think it was like the first stream that we did on this branch. So like if you're looking for best practice, don't let your branch run this long, and then don't do 20 things on it and then forget to do it. So what we want to do first is work out what we're going to do with it. Okay, so let's say that you are new to a project and you've been brought on, and the previous developer before you has maybe had to be moved off the project or something else, and you're like, oh great, what were they working on? And they're like, oh, they pushed their branch up, go take a look at it and sort it out. And you're presented with this, and you just have a huge whip branch. So the first thing that I would do is like, right, what is this? What's in here? And then then we can start to plan what we want to do to get it into master. Because we're going to assume, let's kind of just work on the assumption that the code in there is due to go into master. We're not going to worry about like doing a full code review on it at this stage, just because that's a whole other process that I don't really want to get into. We can just kind of skip that. So I'm going to start just a doc for some notes here, and we're going to note in order what this is kind of doing. So here we are installing some gems. We're trying to get our testing up and running. So factory bot, and this is all related to testing. Again, if you're new to the technology that the repository contains, you might struggle just from these quick messages, in which case you actually would need to go through each commit and look at what is happening. I'm happy to, I did this, so I'm happy just to take the comments and just take them at face value, but you would need to do more due diligence of going through and checking what each one was if you weren't familiar with like like install pry. If you don't know what pry is, that means nothing to you. Whereas you'd need to go through and be like, right, what's it doing? Why is it doing it? And then you could you can kind of write your plan for the rebase based on that. Whereas I did the work, and B, it's Rails, so we kind of know what some of these things are. So pry, Rails controller testing, factory bot is also related to testing. So this is installing some gems. Okay, that one. Then we've got getting factory bot factories set up. This actually stung me later on. I think I remember mentioning on another stream where it adds in things like ID and created that and updated that. We ran some sort of script to get these defaults built, and they actually came back to bite me, which we removed another commit. Now we could look for that change and start to come back to it. So let's just make a quick list, super non-technical. So the first thing we did was related to testing. So then we put in the flash messages. I assume we were trying to do something, and then the initial styles to the channel show UI. So we were doing something around getting the UI working. And again, if you're interested in what these actually were, all these streams are up on YouTube, so you can go take a look just in the Sundae Club channel. Then we kind of get into the meat of it. So we then start to work on the channels controller. So we do testing, we do something with the UI, then we start to get into the channels controller work. And so as I start to put the list together, what I'm trying to do is look for groups of behavior, groups of things that could go together. Like maybe we worked on something, went away for a few commits and worked on something else, then come back to the original thing. We could group those two areas where we work on it, and we can rebase them. So each commit is sequential. But what we could do is say, oh well, these are related and these are related. We could swap the order and bring them together. And maybe there are, let's say there are 6 commits. There might only need to be 3, because 3 work in progress ones were like, hey, try this thing out. And then the other 3 were like, actually, that didn't work out. Let's do it a different way. You might not need to leave all of those in your branch. You might squash them or do a fix-up or something like that. And that's what I'm looking for when we're making this initial list. How are we going to group this work together? And then that will inform how we then rebase it, which will in turn inform how we trying to get it into master. So that's channels. This is all still related to our channel stuff. So we added a form, and we could edit the channel and blah, blah, blah. Then we could add a link to the show to allow people to edit it. Cool. Okay, then we go into migrations. Often during work in progress stuff, I personally will leave migrations in their own commit. Often in code bases, that's not an option, because you need to have you need the code that the commit uses to be in the commit. But I just try and flag to myself to make rebasing easier. Hey, there's a migration in here with a database. You need to, hey, future developer, you just need to be aware of that. And then I'll often, if it needs to be in a class, a commit with other work, then I will make sure to add that in. So let's keep going. So we're still working on channels. Now we're gonna add a migration to a channel. So this is all still channels related. So I'm assuming this is per stream. So we've got show view, and then right. So then we've got the concept. So with channels, what we did is we did something to do with them. Then we added we're doing something around the concept of suspensions for channels. So sorry, I should have mentioned up front, the app that we're working on here, if you haven't watched any of the other streams, is related to it's like a little content management system for websites for streamers. So each channel would have its own website and kind of move through. So a channel is a model in the app. So we added suspension, and then we added the concept of admin behavior. I remember doing that. So we add admin behavior for channels. Cool. And so then suddenly we switch back to installing gems. So I'm going to assume that because we know that we did this weekly, that we suddenly changed to doing something else rather than continuing on that flow. But again, as I mentioned, you're looking for grouping. So suddenly we see installed gem. Could we potentially, let me just make a note, it was up here that we did it. Could we group all of the gem installations together perhaps? Or could we, you know, that's what I'm looking for here, looking for groups of work that we did. One of the handy things is that my memory of doing the streams after I've done them is not amazing, because obviously I have to go off and work on other code bases between Sundays. So this really is like rebasing someone else's work. I don't remember half of it. Okay, so we are obviously then moving into devise and adding our users. Okay, so here we're then doing devise, and we're adding the concept of the concept of users, which is cool. Adding users, and that seems to take us all the way to there. Okay, so that's grouped other than whether we were to consider moving the gems out, but that would make sense to be grouped there. So that's all adding users, that makes sense. Then we move to more admin stuff. Was this fixing to add authenticate as a before external base? Oh, so this is more kind of admin-y based stuff still. This is obviously the commits are in reverse run. They're getting newer as they go higher. My notes are just going the other way around. But again, I'm just at the moment I'm only grouping them chronologically as I see them, and then using my notes I can then move those around. So then we go back to more gem stuff. So again, I'm just gonna take these. So there's more gem stuff. So maybe that is a group we want to group together. So then we've got Pundit, gems, or we may choose to group that with the work related to that gem. So obviously devise is for users and authentication, stuff like that. And Pundit is around permissions and things like that. So maybe we'd group it with that. So we then, okay, we then add static pages. I'm guessing we did that so that we had a home page to log into or something like that, but that then doesn't naturally fall into another group. We could have done this at any point. Like, there's nothing in here to add a home page, for example, that needs to be grouped with doing authentication or doing users. So we might be like, oh, well, we added a home page. We literally just added a phrase to it. Maybe we could bump that right to the front because maybe we say there should have been a home page this whole time. Okay, so now we're back to migrations. Yeah, so this one I didn't put the migration on its own. I think on the streams I'm not too diligent about doing anything consistently. Okay, so this was where we adjusted our this is where we adjusted our models and introduced the concept of a site, whereas we were previously working on a channel, but I had then bothered to go and do some research and said that it would be better to have a site that could have many channels, and so the site became the core thing that we wanted to work on rather than the channel, which creates an interesting, so static pages, sites, because this model, the site, then became kind of the key thing that we want to work on. I think we left all of the channel stuff in, but don't forget when you're rebasing, you don't have to keep everything. So this is all just work in progress stuff. So we could just ditch all of this stuff if we decided that, you know, editing the channels is no longer relevant. We could always redo it later. It was just for demo, and obviously the streams are still there. So when you're rebasing something, you don't have to keep everything that's there. You're reevaluating everything that was work in progress, or I am certainly. Again, normally they wouldn't be this long, so you would only be doing one thing at a time. But this is just an extreme example. Or, you know, like on a hack day, or when you're learning something, maybe they do go this long because you're just like, let's just keep going. Okay, so more site stuff. So how did we mark? So channels controller, adding sites is all covered. So then you had the form. Right. Okay. So then we go through to the well, let's just call it setup because that's what we called it. So in that stream, we added the concept of a site, the model. I think this is all in the same stream. And then we said we want to actually treat this as our primary thing the user interacts with, not a channel. And we then created this setup where basically the user we'd give them a homepage. From the homepage, they could type in the name of the site they wanted to set up. And then we would take them through the setup process. They would go step 1, step 2, step 3. And on step 3, they would eventually create a user account, which was available because earlier on we had added the device gem. That makes sense. So, okay. So this one here is a handy flag to myself. Oh, I even bothered to write notes. Cool. So needs tests. So if you are doing work in progress commits, leave yourself some breadcrumbs, because if there's a potential there might be a lag time-wise before coming back to do this rebase. Leave yourself some help. Let's commit writing the controller, refining the user and associated with the site. Earlier in the process, we do have device controllers for this, but I don't think we need them, as this does everything we need. And device model. Okay, fair enough. We still need to add tests here, so you ever come back and add those tests? We added a feature test and the site setup users controller. Yeah, looks like we did it later on. Okay. Okay, so let's go back to our notes. So in site setup, mentioned we need tests here, there. Looks like they're in later commits. So again, that just flags us. Maybe we can rebase those down. They don't need to live at the end. If we've got a commit that says, hey, we need tests, we then wrote the tests. They don't need to be in 2 different commits. So those are the types of things we're looking at during a rebase. There's so many. This is going to take so long. Oh, God. Okay, let's keep going. Let's keep going. I can't get demoralized this early. Okay. Okay, so some sort of device helper. Can that go, can this go back when we added device? So remember we're looking at, looking at trying to reorder things and have fewer commits that make more sense. So just looking for things to be closed down. Add property to user factory. These are all pretty small, okay. Again, also, setting. These are all things that potentially can go backwards, because these are all related. Again, it doesn't actually say in the work in progress message, but these are needed to get devise working in tests. So we just basically needed to tell devise what the default URL options were, and there's no reason we couldn't have added that earlier on in related thing and just added a paragraph to the commit messages just to say why we added it when it might not have been obvious. Yes, this test was broken in earlier work where we added device to the base control, so we need to auth the user in the test. So again, more stuff. Can we we move this up again? So this work in progress one, it was broken in earlier work, okay, well, if we know we broke the test in earlier work and this is the fix, why can't we just move the fix back when we're rebasing? Okay, so organization ID. Okay, so then we're doing... okay, so we're doing organization stuff. And then we're doing... You remember when I said that we'd been burned when we were doing the factory stuff earlier on, and we wanted to potentially go back and fix that. So here is the commit where we did that. But if you remember, that commit was right up the first things here. So we could pull that all the way back because we just added things that we don't need here. So again, we might create headaches for ourselves, but we might not. Okay, so where were they? Let's remove unneeded attributes. Factory bar attributes. Move back. Cool. So if you notice that we start off with some very broad themes, and then we're actually kind of going almost commit by commit here. I think the work in progress branch where I was tidying everything up, and so we're starting to like fix individual things. Point it seems. It's more organization stuff. Access. This is then all association stuff. So there's a lot of channel site. So this is more recent. This was only last week, I think. Association work, which I think. Yep, so then there's fourth. These are all association stuff. So now, we're adding in new associations that were there. Then we fix tests. Oh no, sorry, that's adding a feature test. So if you remember, these last ones are adding tests. And I said, oh, maybe we could move them back to when we said we needed tests. The downside of having a work in progress branch this long is that you probably have done a bunch of changes between saying, hey, this needs tests, and then actually writing the test. You also probably change the behavior of that thing. Maybe not, but you increase your risk of doing it, which is why you don't want your work in progress branches to go this long, because then you can't just be like, oh, hey, well, we'll add those tests. We'll just take the tests and then move them back, because if the tests you wrote ended up changing the changes in behavior, you also have to move that behavior back. So like you can't just move everything back in time and assume it will work, especially if you know you've changed that behavior in the meantime. Or worse, not worse, but like you also might have added other tests to the file, done other things, and so you're just going to make the rebase messier and messier. So it's not always going to be more beneficial for you to try and move that back, and you might not need to. The other thing that we're trying to do here is tell a coherent narrative, relevant information to future developers. So they're going to look in git blame and look to see when and why a line changed. If you added the tests in way later, like that might make sense. Is there any risk to not pulling them back? Like obviously if it's a production site, you probably wouldn't want the code to go out without the corresponding tests going up. So that wouldn't be non-optional. But then you could say, well, okay, well, as long as the whole rebase goes together, they will go up together, and it doesn't matter that they're a few commits apart or many commits apart. As you work on a code base, you will have these kind of policies as to what you do. Like I said, this is probably not something you would bump into regularly. This is more like, just stuff while you're learning or trying. But then, I don't know, if weird stuff happens out there, and especially if you're contracting, weird things happen. Okay, that's a lot. That's a long list. Okay, so... UI question mark. Let's group these up, shall we? Okay, let's group these up. So does this initial UI actually do? Let's start asking some specific questions. So basically just showing our organization. Yeah, but we're wrapping it in some Tailwind classes. And that's on channel show. When's the next time we actually touch channel show? Here. Like that's just a footnote. Like we don't really care. The whole UI is going to get through out. So this is almost irrelevant. I think we were just basically trying to see if we could get some Tailwind stuff working because I was new to it, but it's irrelevant to a later developer. The fact that we touch show here as well, and that's just adding an edit link. So that could just as well go in here as a footnote because that's all relevant. So those 3 commits I think can become 1. So what's that in as our note? That just says channels. So that one can stay on its own. That one is I think we were checking visually that the flash was there, but I think we also now have feature tests that rely on it. So we do want those to be rendered out there. The flash messages that come from Rails, like the little built-in UI notification-y things, and it's fine. Like that's pretty basic. Where there's no formatting or anything. We just needed them out. We can that can stay and just get written up properly. I think these 3 can then go together. I'm interested to know if we do come back and change the factory stuff. Where was that? Because that really is pointless cleanup later on. Like we could move that back and see how much that screws us over later. So what we're gonna do is the same time we did this previously with the homework edition version. We're gonna do this in lots of tiny little rebases rather than trying to do one huge one and plan all that stuff out. Maybe people do that, but that's never seemed sensible to me. So yeah, I just don't know why we didn't actually add any tests for this one. I guess we did it. Okay, so we were just prepping. So all of this is really just prep to get that working. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 we think could maybe become 4 plus rebasing in the changes to the factories. All right, let's give that a go. Let's try that as our first one. So 35 minutes into the thing, let's actually start the rebase itself. So we're going to grab these 2 things, and we're also going to try and pull back this one here, the factory bot attributes moved. It's just under my camera, sorry. There. All right, let's give it a go. So let's make this font a bit bigger. And you'll see it'll actually move us over into VS Code anyway. So let's just check what we're up to. So we're still on this install pundit. Let's put in git rebase master, and then -i is interactive, which will show you a list of the commits that are available to work with. And we want 1, 2, 3. Okay. Okay, let's squash these together and just smush the commit. The commit messages are only one line, so we're not too fussed about them for now. So S is going to be squash. If you're watching this, you probably are interested in Git rebasing, so hopefully you know that. If you need the references as to what to type in, they are at the bottom of the interactive rebase screen. So what you can do, pick, reword, edit, squash, fix up, and a bunch of other stuff. Which I don't use as much, but I probably should learn how. So these are all going to get squished into one commit. They'll get squished into this commit, but it will show you the edit screen to kind of what do you want from these commit messages. And should we try and what was the other message for the factory? Here we go. Remove unneeded attributes of factory. What that will break. Should we try and move that one all the way back? That's a terrible idea, isn't it? So when you've got a list of commits like this, you can actually just grab one and I can just cut it in that order. It will then cause conflicts if it's broken stuff further down. So let's see what happens here. So to run this, you basically just save it and close it, and then Git will pick up on that and know to carry on with the next step in the rebase. This might be an awful idea. Let's see what happens. So save, close. Cool, so this is the next step, which is, it works top to bottom. So what it's done is seen that we want to squash these. It's taken the 3 commit messages and is showing you this is a combination of 3 commit messages, first, second, and third. What do you want the new commit message to be for the commit that we're making? And what I'm going to do is change it to swap these around. Because that's basically, that was the bulk one, and then these two were just doing the UI. The bulk of the work was in this one. So I can say that I'm going to come back and reword it. This is not final anyway, so I'm just saving that. And let's see what else exploded. So you will actually get successfully rebased and updated. Okay, so that didn't seem to cause any conflicts later on. So GitHub, I don't know how well the GitHub app does this, but hopefully should now. Okay, so I removed those. I moved that commit down, but I didn't actually move it into the one where they were created, which I can do next. Flash message, and then this one now contains, so if you notice this one here, the add, edit, and update actions to channels controller is now just a single commit, but notice that our new messages here includes the other 2 commits, and you can tell that because it has the changes to /channels/show.html, and they're now all in one commit. So we're going to gradually chip away at just the sheer number of commits. We probably should have counted before we started how many we had. So let's do that again, because I realized that we don't need this commit at all. So what we're going to do is put an F on that one, which is fix up, which will that's probably a better definition than whatever I'll say. It's like squash, but discard this commits log message. So and squash is meld. That's a good word. That's the word I would have been looking for. Meld into previous commit. So this one will go away, and any changes from this commit will go into this one, and we won't worry about the commit message on here. And you often use this for like fixes because you don't care about what this actually says. It just needs to be in here. You can save and close. That is successfully rebased and updated. And then again, if we go back to GitHub, that commit we were selected is gone. And then when we go into update factories and initial config, we no longer have the properties in here that were like ID, created at, updated at, and things like that. It's only the fields that we actually want to change. We haven't had any conflicts, so later on that file should still be as we want it to be, including if we added anything to it going through, and when he really cares if there's any conflict. Cool. Okay, so that brings us down to our 4 commits, and we've pulled one from the other one. What we're going to do is let's rebase those. Let's write our let's rebase them. Let's rewrite the commit messages, create a branch, and then we will make a pull request for those and move those over into master. And then no matter how much further we get, we will have at least kind of shown that process end to end. So let's do that. So we're going to do the same thing. Get rebase master dash I, because master is the one we're doing. So what we're going to do is we are going to reword these. So that's R. We're going to do these first 4. Oh, so how many have we got? So we've got 34. Okay. Let's get down to a slim 30 by getting rid of these 4. And that will also, hopefully we can touch on some of the stuff in GitHub. Okay, so now what we're doing with R is just rewording the commit message. This isn't going to change anything in the commits themselves. And you can always, when you're doing this, you can still go and look. I'm using the GitHub app thing still, but often you'll want to actually look at what's in the commit to remind yourself of what you're writing. So you can still move around while you're writing this message. You can still go and look at that code stuff. Install pry, Rails controller system, factory bot, just gems. What character count is that line at? Oh, I'm not going to get too hung up on that. I don't really care. Oh, I've just had a memory about those mailer settings. What did we say? Oh, they were for device, weren't they? Yes, gems will be used for testing. Will be used for testing and debugging our code. That's it. I mean, we're literally just installing the gems. You don't need to write a long message if you don't need to. Testing and debugging our code. That's it. Okay, let's do the next one. Will be used to generate test data for the app. This commit, we're also adding some to we're also not default data. This commit we're also adding. What do we add? Yeah. Again, probably more than you need here. Like, this is all pretty basic setup stuff, so any kind of dev moving through would be like, yeah, you put factories in, whatever. Like, you're not really telling too much of a story on this one, I think. So, and close that one. Again, I'm just closing these files. The rebase process will just reopen them. Again, I've changed my Git editor to move me into VS Code. This could show up in Vim or any editor. You can configure Git to open your messages in whatever you like. So if you remember, this was adding the Rails Flash messages to application layout. Not really changing these. These kind of make sense. So. During early development. Yes, we do. No formatting or anything happening. Content of the Flash messages. Again, probably don't need any of that. It's just I'm always looking to reassure myself that I wasn't trying to do more here. Like there's a reason that there's no like CSS or anything in there. I'm trying to head off at the parts what future developer on this repo would probably be me, but like what would they be looking to see? Like I'm often just trying to reassure myself. It's like, hey, we weren't trying to do anything flashy here. We're just spitting this content out. What was in this? Okay, so I edit them. And okay, so we've got our first test in here as well. But obviously already done show in a previous commit. We're just updating. This is just this is an initial version of controller rough. In order to be able to edit did I actually have to create? There's an initial version and some rough UI. Channel. We also added some classes to the show view just to mainly to check they were working. I think it was like a container or something, wasn't it? Just to make it usable. Yeah. UI a bit more usable during development. Cool, and that has tests in it. So I think we're done. Is that 4? Well, successfully rebased. Okay, so what's in here now? We should have our 4 commits. 1, 2, 4, and then the next ones are work in progress ones. Okay, cool. So let's see if we can do this. So I'm actually going to jump back to source tree because it'll be more visual. Again, might not be able to see the font size on this. Where's the stream? So you might not be able to see the font size on this too well. But hopefully it'll be more visual in terms of what's actually happening in the branches. So if you can see on the branch route right at the end, taking us to that last work in progress one, we're still on that install pundit branch. What we actually want to do is we're going to make a new branch from our 4 rewritten commits, kind of squashed and rewritten. So down here, these are the 4 that we want to make ours. And in source tree, what I can do is just double click on that to check it out. But also I can just grab the hash of the commit and just do git checkout, and then this hash here. So I can just do confirm change working commit. Are you sure you want to check out? That's exactly, it's basically just checking out this branch. The double click is doing the git command for me. So doing so will make your working copy a detached head, which means you won't be on a branch anymore. We're going to make a branch. I'm reading this out because I know how small the font is. If you want to commit after this, you'll probably want to either check out a branch again or create a new branch. Is this okay? So super helpful help message. That is exactly what we want to do. We are going to we're going to say yes. Cool. So we're now in a detached head state. So I'm just going to check the stream real quick because, oh, there we go. I think Google had just gone a bit out of sync. I'm just going to check the audio is still working. Bear with me just a second. Should still hear my voice. Yep, that's my voice. Okay, cool. So now we're in a detached head state, and what we're going to do is make a new branch. Now, again, we can do this from within source tree, or we can just so I'm just going to click this button here to make it quick. So we are going to say add gems and actually it'll just be editing channels. That'll do. Doesn't really matter what it's called now. So now if you can see, again, I know the font is too small, so hopefully you can just make the colors out. It doesn't really matter that you can't read it. But visually in source tree, what we've got here is master is now here, editing channels branch is here, and our work in progress, one, the install pundit, as it's still called, is way up here. So now we've got a visual representation. The GitHub app for Git doesn't do a great job of showing us that. We're now on editing channels, so it doesn't show us the branch past the one we're on. We would have to jump over to install pundit and then go all the way there. It doesn't kind of show us multiple ones at the same time. I don't actually know if it can. Can I just say all of them? I don't think it has that built in. So okay, you can change the font size, but you can't actually do the thing you want to do. Okay, so now what we're going to do is push editing channels, and that's going to be the first. Those are going to be the first 4 commits that we then get into master, and then we can rebase install pundit, which is still the most stupid name, but just imagine that one is called work in progress, off of master again, and those 4 will no longer be included in that. I haven't described that very well, but hopefully visually you'll be able to see it. So we've got editing channels. So what we're going to do, let's just jump back over to here so we can do git status. Just check that you can see that. Yep, cool. So git status, we are on editing channels. That's the name of our branch. And what we're going to do is we're going to do git push origin editing channels. So we're only going to push those 4 commits. We're not going to push the whole work in progress branch up. Git push origin editing channels. Now, GitHub now does this cool thing where it gives you the URL in the response you get back from that. So that push, it knows that it's already there, and it's like, hey, create a pull request for editing channels on GitHub by visiting this URL. So we're going to grab a browser real quick, and we're going to bump this font size up as well. So these are the 4 that we rebased and then renamed. Again, you can see our little messages in here. Everything's super neat, much more tidy than it was in our original work in progress stuff. And we've said that this is a group of work that goes together. Okay, so here, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep going with a pattern that we've done before, which is making a pull request. There's no need to do this if I knew that they were like, I'm gonna just merge them in, like this repo isn't being used by anyone, that, you know, no one's gonna review this or anything like that. What I could do is locally I could merge those commits into master and just push master. There's no reason to create a pull request and move any of that process to GitHub itself. So if you're watching this and being like, I'm interested in this process, at every step of this process, you're kind of in control of how you do it, and whether you're working for an employer might influence things like how they work, the size of the project, how many other people are working on it. Are you making, is it a fork of another repository that you want to make a pull request onto their fork? Like, what you're attempting to do affects kind of your plan. And as long as you, again, we started by writing our notes and how we were going to plan things out, and I knew that we were going to make a PR for this. As long as you kind of have a rough plan for that in your mind, it'll make your life easier, rather than being like, okay, well, do I merge these into master locally and then just push them straight to master on GitHub, which is our origin, or am I going to make a pull request? If I am, why? Who's it for? What am I going to say? I'm going to make a pull request for a simple reason, that I want to kind of have a little audit trail of pull requests to be able to refer back to in the streams. So these, I'm going to merge this in because I don't have any CI set up for GitHub, which would be continuous integration to run the tests or anything like that. So there's actually nothing checking this, and obviously we're going to do it right now. There's no reviewers. But what I want to do is kind of set that precedent as to how we're going to do the pull requests, and then we can refer back to them in other streams. And the work itself is actually visually grouped. You can kind of see how things went together. Now, there are other options for that inside Git. You could do things like a bubble merge. So you could actually kind of have your work in groups and then create a merge commit, or lots of different ways that you can decide to do it. I'm just going to use the pull request. I'm actually not going to keep the kind of bubble merges around. We're going to have one clean history and not have kind of merge commits going through. So let's make a quick message. So we're going to say add initial editing experience for channels. And what we can actually do is lift in the commit messages. You don't need to do a whole PR message all the time if you've written really thorough commit messages. Again, I'm going to be the one merging this, so I don't really care what this says, but we can check it. This is initial version. Rough UI. Great. So I'm just going to create that pull request. Now, nothing's going to happen when I make this pull request because there is nothing to do CI. GitHub Actions and several other apps can be used. How quick are these to set up? We use GitHub Actions at work, but I haven't been involved in working with them. Like, is that genuine? Are they any plug and play at all? Oh God, am I about to go down a rabbit hole? Workflows made for your repository. Ruby. Set up this workflow. Build and test a Ruby project with Rake. One for T. So, GitHub action for RSpec. It's from January. Okay, no, this doesn't look plug and play. The fact that I'm still scrolling through a tutorial would indicate that this is going to take longer than 2 seconds. Okay, kind of interested to do this. Maybe we could do this tomorrow on the stream, because I've mentioned doing setting up Heroku to run the app, so maybe setting this up as well. Kind of into that idea. Okay, well, we're going to assume that we don't care about this right now anyway. So let's go back to our PR. So our PR is totally untested, and we have no idea if it's going to do anything. Good, and we're not going to code review it because we are just assuming that everything's great. So ramp and some test setup stuff. I think those are the first tests ever being added. And what we're going to do is merge our pull request. Now, GitHub specifically gives you this button here, which is rebase and merge. But you have other options here. So clicking on the little caret next to it will give you create a merge commit, so that will actually all commits from this branch will be added to the base via a merge commit. So you'll see that a lot on open source branches where you'll be like, hey, we took all these commits and smushed them, and here's the blurb. Squash and merge. The 4 commits from this branch will be combined into one in the base branch. And this is the 4 commits from the branch where we rebase and added to the base branch. Again, this comes down to the project that you're working on. So like I actually just kind of covered this slightly if you're following. So basically, I'm going to keep the master of this project for now, or main, sorry. Is it main or master? I don't even know what it is on this repo. It's master in this repo. Okay, so rebase and merge. We're going to keep that branch sequential. So it's going to be and then as we merge things in, it's just going to be one line. And then anything that gets added, we're not going to add in bubble merges yet. So what we could do is add in like 4 or 5 changes, and then they could come into the into master with that merge commit. So they could have a commit that was just those changes being added in, and squash and merge would just only have one commit, but then you could still go back and look at the pull request. If you're not sure, if you are a learner and you're watching this, like, try these out. You can, and again, this is GitHub simply doing things you can do yourself in Git and then push to master. You do not have to use this button. It's just helpful thing that they're giving you. So we could go back to our branch locally, rebase those in to master, and then push master, and it would do the same thing. They're literally just doing it for you, and they're going to move master forward. If in doubt as to how these work, set up a repo on GitHub and try them out. Like, make a bunch of changes, make a pull request, and see what happens with each one. And then you'll kind of get a sense of the kind of pros and cons of each one and what you prefer. And then you'll see other projects and how they do it as well. Is a good way to do it. And if you work privately with an employer or tutor or anything like that, again, they'll be able to provide guidance. We're going to rebase and merge is the short run of it. So we're going to do that. Yep, we're going to confirm it. And what has just happened? So basically, that doesn't auto delete. I think there's a setting somewhere that can be deleted. So what has happened? These 4 commits are now on master, but only on origin, not locally. So my local version of master is now behind origins. So I still have these 4 commits in the editing channels branch. So now we're out of sync. So source tree is a good way to visualize this. So if you see now origin master and master in the same place, when it refreshes, boom, it refreshes, and now we're out of sync. Again, I know you probably can't read the font size because it might be too small, but if you can see the visually, handily, this one is red, which is super helpful. These 4 commits are now on origin master. Our local version of master is all the way back here, where it was when we left it, and editing channels is now off on its own little branch away from master, because locally it doesn't know that that has happened, and that goes away. There is no origin editing channels because I just clicked delete at the bottom of the screen here. Okay, how do we resolve this issue? Well, like we said, what we're going to do is we're going to bring master up to date. Then we're going to rebase our install pundit branch, which contains loads of stuff that isn't just installing pundit. Maybe we should just rename that work in progress while we're doing that. And then we're going to rebase that against master. So bring master up to date, rebase the other one against it, and suddenly those 4 will be in master and just won't exist. And if you remember, we had 34 commits on our install pundit gem. Let's jump over to the terminal and get that done. So we can say git status. We're on our editing channels branch, but what we actually want to do is git check out master. Jump to master. Your branch is behind origin master by 4 commits. We want to do that. Use git pull to update your local branch. Sure. So git pull origin master. You can just do git pull. I don't know why I have a habit. I tend to almost always add the remote and the branch name. I think it gives me like confidence that it will flag up if anything's gone wrong in my brain. Right, master is now up to date. Let's go back to our visual source tree. So now master was down here. The little blue tag thing has gone, and there's now in sync here. So this one says master and this one says origin master. We still have install pundit is completely in the wrong place now. It's like, hang on, wait, I'm now behind master. So we can do that. We can say git checkout, install Pundit, spell it quickly, switch to that branch. Okay, cool. So now what we want to do is we want to rebase this against master. We don't need to do an interactive rebase because we're not changing anything about it. We just want it to be played back on top of master. That's now happened. Now, what we should see when we go back to source tree is that those 4 commits, boom, they are now on master, and then install Pundit follows afterwards. So then you're like, well, wait, I still have this random editing channels thing here. Okay, so that can now be deleted because that's already been merged on remote, and this is now like a leftover version. So an origin editing channels has already been deleted. So I think, is it git prune origin? Git prune, remove all unreachable objects from the object table. Base. I think we can do this. Prune origin. Just git prune. Git remote prune. Yeah, get remote prune origin. Okay. So what that will do is my reference, you can also do, there are other things you can do there, that's just the one that came to mind. But what was happening is my reference, my local version of editing channels was still looking at that remote version of editing channels, the branch editing channels. And that's now been pruned. So if we go back to source tree, there should not be 2, if I refresh this, we go from 2 red tags to 1. Yep, so now we have 1 because it's just refreshed to know that the repo doesn't have a reference to the remote one, and we can actually now remove editing channels. Let's, again, I'm just double clicking, that will jump me to there, and we can actually, I'm going to do it here, delete editing channels, and I can force delete. That is git branch -capital D editing channels in terminal, I think. Is it capital D? I think so, because you just want to force it. You just force remove, basically. Cool, and we're gone. So now we only have master, which is these 4 commits on. And we should now only have 30 commits. I don't know where we saw that number in our... No, it doesn't say. I don't know where I knew there were 34 commits. It must be in the rebase, I guess. So if we do, what are we on now? We're on install pundits, and now if we do git rebase master-I. Yep, so now we only have 30 commits left. So that has taken us an hour and 10 minutes to remove 4 commits. Obviously, had I not been explaining things as we were going, you'd smash through it a lot faster. I'm just kind of taking my time and blathering on while I'm doing it. So those are our groupings. I think I am... Yeah, an hour and 10, that's a long time. Yeah, I think I might draw this stream to a close here just after that 1 PR, because we've gone through that whole process. So if you are wondering how to carry on doing that, like, it's basically just, we're just going to repeat that process over and over again until we're done. So I don't think I'm going to carry on streaming that for now, because I don't know how useful it is particularly to anybody. I might try and get these done later, but it is coming up to lunchtime and I am getting hungry, so I think I'm going to wrap this up. So let's jump back to here. So thank you so much to anyone who's watched. I'm going to try and put a couple of posts about this one, because last time we did the git rebase stuff, people found that interesting because it wasn't Ruby on Rails related specifically. It was just interesting to people, I think, who want to do stuff with git. And if you have any comments or anything, just feel free to follow and post or anything on the video and things like that. And I will be back tomorrow morning. If I don't come back on this afternoon to do the rest of this branch, then I will be back tomorrow morning 10:30 a.m. UK time to do Sundae Club as normal, when we will be, I think I said we would be putting the app up on Heroku, because it now has kind of an onboarding flow, and also potentially looking at GitHub Actions after today, which is pretty interesting, I think, because it'll be cool to get some tests up and running. And other than that, have a great day and see you next time.